Hello. Really excited to be with all of you today. Kind of bummed I can't see everyone. We'll give a couple minutes to let people trickle on in, or maybe we'll ask for some chats or ask some questions in the chat. Gabby first, nice. Curious where everyone is. I am Angela. I lead enterprise marketing at Zapier, and we have Adrian here, who is the CRO at Webflow. We'll do intros in a few minutes. Seattle, we see some good West Coast. New Zealand, ooh. Australia, wow, we got some around the globe. I'd love to see that. Adrian, you're also in San Francisco, so
I know I should put San Francisco in the chat.
Anyone else San Francisco? Me, I am also in San Francisco, to be clear. Banff, Canada, ooh, cool. Got a good international crowd here. So I still see the numbers trickling up, but we will get started in maybe like 30 seconds here. Curious if anyone has like one thing they're really dying to get out of today, or like really hoping to leave today with. If you want to throw any of that in the chat, I'd love to hear that too. Oh, penguins. Been dying to watch that documentary series. I think Blake Lively's narrating it. Is it Mystery of the Penguins, or I forget what it's called? Really want to watch that. 10x my high-level capabilities with Zapier. Cool. I like that. All right. Well, let's jump on in. I will give a little bit of context and intro why we're doing this. And then I will go straight into the Q&A. We really want to save a lot of the time for you. All submitted close to 300 questions, and we parsed through them. We'll answer some of the most pressing ones or some of the most common ones, and then we'll open it up for some live questions as well. In terms of backstory, like why are we doing this? I met Adrian at a Webflow dinner here in San Francisco, and I have to tell you all, I have been asking at least 25 C-suite folks over the last 2 months, asking them, so how do you use AI? And my follow-up question is always, how do you use AI? Because the answers I get are most often, oh, well, like my team uses Cursor, it's really cool. Or, oh, well, my EA does XYZ. Or like, oh, our marketing teams created some GPTs. It's like the fast deflect, right? Execs talk about what their teams are doing. But Adrian's answer was really fast. These are the last 3 specific things I did with AI. And as he was sharing, he started to think of more ideas, more things that he had done in the last couple of weeks that were cool. So it stuck with me that this is an exec who is actually using AI himself and is not just talking a big game about what his team is doing. So we'll get into that. We'll get into his specific use cases, but I knew from there that we had to have him on here for our AI AMA. And the theme for today is really going from hype to reality. So, gosh, sorry, y'all. There is a lot of AI hype out there, no surprise. We want to ground this in what are people actually doing? What is actually driving impact? How can you get started, or accelerate your skills, and not just talk about the possibility of all of the agents like other LinkedIn gurus. So quick housekeeping, the webinar is being recorded. Please ask your questions, upvote other questions. Google Chrome is best for the streaming, but you're already all in your browser, so hopefully you're not having any issues. I gave you a little bit of a tee up to Adrian, and I will let him introduce himself, maybe say a few words as well.
Well, thank you, Angela. I'm so happy to be here. So my name is Adrian Rosenkranz. Shout out to those in Mexico. I think there's quite a few. One side of my family's from Mexico City. And I couldn't be more happy to be here. Angela and I were talking at that dinner, and it was so funny because when she said, no, how do you use AI? I was like, yeah, this is how I use AI. And so this started to become just a discussion. And I'm just really excited to share with all of you, get your ideas. I always find it so helpful as we share and all learn in this amazingly fast and dynamic environment, how we can all learn together at the same time. And so for context, I'm the Chief Revenue Officer at Webflow. I'm responsible for our sales and our marketing, as well as success and support. And what we are, so you're so you know, is we are a AI native website experience platform that helps modern marketing teams build and manage, optimize, and learn all in one place so you can bring your site to the next level. So that gives you a little context as to who I am, how we started this conversation, as Angela mentioned. And I really hope to make this as valuable for all of you and as tactical as possible.
Amazing. Thanks for the intro. So we'll cover a few mental models and frameworks, and we'll dive straight into questions and even demo a few different agent use cases, workflows. And let's get into it. So I think one thing that you said when we were talking about this, Adrian, that really resonated with me is like, we're answering these questions, we're covering all of these as we're all in this together, and nobody has this figured out yet, right? So like you've done some really cool things, your team is doing some really cool things. We feel the same way at Zapier, but there's still a lot for us to learn. So I am also excited to hear from all of you, the things that you're doing, give us ideas on things to build and help push the envelope on what's possible. As we dive in, there is a lot of talk on AI transformation, right? That is like the umbrella topic that we're all talking about. One project we've been quietly working on at Zapier is analyzing what top companies are doing on AI strategy, pulling out those commonalities into a tech agnostic framework. I think this is helpful for framing the conversation today, where you hear about folks having an AI strategy, or everyone has seen at this point, I'm sure you all have, that the MIT study about 95% of AI deployments not making it past pilots. Well, we see a lot of like, oh, we just have ChatGPT licenses at the enterprise level, and that's a strategy. We know that's not the case. So this model is kind of a fun equation of change for thinking about what are the core components across leadership, culture, tools, and governance to get to AI transformation, and what happens if you're missing any one of those, right? You get everything but governance, well, you probably have some risky bets, or you've got everything but leadership, and you've got very directionless programs and pilots. Adrian, anything you'd want to add on this as we dive in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really helpful to kind of think of this as a framework to understand where your gaps might be. I think what's interesting is, as I look at this and connect the dots into what we do today, there's a lot of things that you are going to be fundamentally changing your company's workflows with. And so understanding, is this a new workflow or an old workflow, something that we've done for a long time and it's changing, I think also helps connect the dots on these different categories. So for example, if it's a brand new workflow, it's going to be something that you really need the culture that's going to adopt something that they haven't done before, right? On the flip side, if it's an existing workflow, that's where governance really kicks in. And so I really like this a lot to help me think through as we are deploying different ways and really breaking it down to the workflow level of like, what do I need to be aware of as I start to roll out a specific initiative?
Yeah, I would love to hear in the chat if all at your companies, folks who are joining, if you're at your companies, do you feel like any one of these is the weakest link? And how are you seeing that manifest? Like, do you feel like you don't have the tools you need, or the culture isn't set? So please share. Adrian, have you found that any one of these was like the hardest to get prioritization for at Webflow, or like that any one of these seems to be just most challenging?
It's a really interesting question because the leadership one I feel is my own ownership area. So hopefully that's green. But I do think that you'll kind of see from me as we talk that there's a way I think you can do it. And I think you hit it on the head at the start, which was you actually need to use it yourself. Mm-hmm. But I'm seeing a lot in the chat around governance, and I couldn't agree more that governance tends to be the thing that can either slow you down or speed you up. And so for us, one of the areas that I've been working really closely with our CFO on is making sure that we are flexible in the right spots so that our governance maybe allows us to move a little bit quicker where we see less risk, and then be very intentional where we see more risk, so that we can be more effective. And because I think so much of this is also being able to experiment. And so governance can crush it, but also knowing where that, I'd call it like the the cone, where like as you get to the tip of the sideways triangle, that's where it gets to be very sensitive data or very sensitive workflows that a mistake has pretty big impact. And then as you get to the widest part, you know that it's not as concerning. And so making sure we have a very intentional gradient to be flexible and very, very rigorous.
Yeah. Yeah. And someone's asking what we mean by governance. So I think of governance as like the controls and policies in place to decide as a company what you're allowing in terms of AI to take over. And that includes what data does it have access to? What scenarios can you actually put AI, like unleash AI without a human in the loop? What are you requiring a human in the loop to do? I think Jared mentioned something in the chat interesting about the level of implementation aligning your core values. I think that's really important, and those should be in line with each other, right? The governance and the policies and the controls that you have in place for how your team can use AI should match up with various aspects of your risk culture. Are you in fintech? Are you in government? Are you in startup? As well as the company's core values. Cool. So let's keep us moving here. We may come back to this slide, but again, just like helpful framework as we think about these things. The other thing that we got some questions on that we'll talk a little bit more about are principles for driving AI and an innovation inside go-to-market teams explicitly. Now, some of these principles may apply more broadly, but a couple of the things that we see come up again and again, and that Adrian, you shared some of your own approach and own perspective on this. I'd love you to dive deeper on, specifically around tying AI to existing KPIs as opposed to maybe vanity KPIs. We can get into that. Starting where your execs or your board asks questions. I know you just came out of a board meeting, so wondering if that sparked any thoughts on the things that you should be, focusing more with AI on, and then avoiding the efficiency trap that we all know much too well about. I'm doing a lot of things. I'm creating all these automations. I'm creating all these prompts and agents that aren't actually driving impact.
Yeah, it's a great point around tying AI to existing KPIs, and I know we talked about it. And here's a little bit how I think about it. It's almost as if you are choosing to tell the news versus make the news when you're thinking about the analogy of like what KPI you pick. So like, for example, within my teams, knowing that a certain percentage of people use AI, it's good to know from a point of view, at least they're using it. Mm-hmm. But really what we're trying to do is make better customer experiences so that we can go grow our revenue and be successful as a business. And so as I look at where our AI initiatives are, I make sure they ladder to a very specific, as I'm responsible on the go-to-market side, very specific KPI that we are trying to drive. So whether it is pipeline or whether it is customer satisfaction or anything that interacts with customers that drives the business forward, I make sure that our initiatives are connected to that. Even if it's an internal workflow, I want to know how it ladders in. And the reason that's important is because otherwise it could just yield I'm using AI, but we don't actually know how it's making an impact. And I think that's when you start to spend a lot of cycles. And so that's how I try to think about it. And when the board asks me, I actually do the same thing. I ladder in, here's examples of how we're using AI tactically and how that connects to an initiative we're driving to grow our revenue or, improve how relevant we are in marketing in market.
Mm-hmm. I might be skipping ahead, but how do you report to the board on AI at Webflow to the extent that you can share?
Absolutely. So I did it this morning. I have a grid, and in that grid, at least it's a little bit different. We actually break it down by department because today, when you look at it from an engineering perspective, especially because we're a software company, it's going to be a very different set of metrics in terms of how they're building with AI, our product. And then in G&A functions, or specifically under the finance functions, it's also going to be a different flavor. And go to market, I really orient it around my different leaders and help explain, here's what we're doing in customer success and how in customer support, we're able to answer more people's questions more effectively with a really high CSAT rating. Here's in sales, how we're responding faster to inbound leads, how we're helping them get their questions answered more effectively and driving it to pipeline. And so we actually break it down by all my different departments and then the workflows that we're actually looking and doubling down on, and then the outcome that's connected to those. So it ladders really nicely into the departmental level KPIs.
Two things you said that are interesting. One is you are quite literally tying it to your existing KPIs. So great example of that. The other thing is you said about, or a little earlier, is I think anytime we are trying something new, sometimes you do have to set goals that are activity metrics. So we know that AI adoption is not the ultimate end goal, but sometimes you have to start there to measure like what is the activity that we're doing in order to start driving outcomes. So I like that a lot. All right, we're cutting right to the chase here. So in advance, you all submitted, this was a like rolling count as of yesterday or the day before, but at least 248 questions. We are going to run through some of those. And again, you can also ask questions in the chat and we can cover those there. And yes, for those of you asking, there will be a recording for the first 12 minutes we can cover, or you can watch the recording afterwards to catch up on those first 12 minutes. So we categorized, Ryan on our team was nice enough to categorize these into the types of questions that we're asking. And the first up, we've got AI adoption challenges. So one of the first question we're going to cover is, what are some of the biggest pitfalls you've seen when marketing and sales teams try to adopt AI? How can organizations avoid wasting time or resources in the early stages?
It's a great question. And I think I have a really good example of this. That was a personal example. So when I first wanted to implement AI with a team, my thinking was, I'm going to build something myself for them that's going to make their lives so much better that they're just going to use it. That was my thinking. I was like, it's just going to happen. And the missing link is like, you really have to, if you went back to that original grid, there's leadership. So there's top down, there's culture, there's governance, there's all these different pieces. And in this case, the example of what I made originally that didn't get adopted so quickly that now is adopted, it was called the Next Stepsifier, which basically you put in your customer conversation and it helps you figure out what the next steps you should do with the customer. And I thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to shortcut all the time. You just have to drop whatever your transcript was from your call and it will do it. And I had very low adoption. And so the biggest thing that I learned from that specific example was that while it made sense that it was logically easier, the actual workflow of the people using it was too disrupted. They had to go to a different place. It wasn't where they were doing their job. And so that's why it didn't get used at the time. Mm. And as I think about how you can avoid wasting time on resources, and especially in the early stages, is find a workflow, pick one, pick two, that you understand exactly how it works and really make AI fit into the existing workflow that they're working on. So it's not a completely new thing they're learning. And then that starts to build confidence and more experiences so you can start to deploy it in more and more places because they'll start to see how the value works. But it's really hard when you've been doing something one way for a long time to just switch to another, even if it's easier.
Yeah, it resonates a lot across a number of different domains too. A couple of the things I would add on to that is being too, and you sort of alluded to this, having expectations of learning too many new tools at once. I think about this a lot. Obviously, the tool landscape out there in terms of AI startups, AI models, AI pure play point solutions. There are so many, and there are new ones popping up every single day. I don't know if anyone's trying to keep up on product hunt. It's maybe a fool's errand, but being too ambitious, generally being too ambitious at the expense of getting started is something that I see all the time where folks are like, I want to create the thing that does this, but then that's such a big goal that they don't actually get something started. I also think counterintuitively, you've got to accept some heat loss. Think about learning any new tool or new sport. If anyone who plays pickleball or tennis or whatever, golf, when you first get started, you're not immediately amazing, right? You're not getting holes in one. You're not like whatever sports analogy you want to use. And so I think there has to be some tolerance for heat loss where that it seems like you're being inefficient and you're not driving anything important, but you're learning, and that learning builds up to creating something that matters. So like the second part of this question, how can organizations avoid wasting time or resources? I think there has to actually be some tolerance and acceptance at the leadership level for wasting some time and resources, or seemingly wasting time and resources. Yeah, training time, not wasted time. Cool. All right, should we move on? Anything else you want to add, or should we move on to the next question?
Let's keep going.
Sweet. Oh, and actually one thing we meant to cover on this question in terms of like helping your team think about where to start. This actually speaks a bit to what you were talking about. There's a framework that we have internally that we often reflect on in thinking about a quadrant, right? The effort to impact scale, where you've got like low impact, low effort activities. And then you've got high impact, low effort, et cetera, right? I won't read them all out to you. The quadrant where it's obvious to skip and not to focus time in building solutions on is that low impact, high effort category. Whereas there's a lot of like a flow here of finding easy wins and building skills with the low impact, low effort area. That's like a really good starting point that suddenly lets you move to things that are low impact, high effort, and then up to high impact, high effort, and just like rethinking that work itself and the simplicity of it. Ryan, you're calling out a great point, which is when you try to start with the Everest problem with AI and automation, overly lofty is like, you just don't get there. So starting to really build with something smaller and less intimidating. We'll come back to this. Next question was, how do you distinguish between automation AI initiative that actually improves alignment between marketing and sales versus those that just add another tool of complexity to the workflow?
It's a great question. How do you figure out sales and marketing better together is a story I think we've heard for over many decades of how do you bring them together, and how do you make everyone work more effectively, and how does AI make this easier or more difficult? What's really interesting is if you think about sales can be an amazing feedback loop for marketing, and marketing can be a great feedback loop for sales. And one of the things that I think is actually, and Brian, I appreciate the thing is sales and marketing alignment actually a thing. Well, as someone who is responsible for both, I'd like to think so. But I think the real trick here is understanding that there are things that are happening as a marketer and as a salesperson that don't necessarily happen in a codified workflow in your business. So I'll give you a very specific example. When you're talking to someone, a customer, a prospect, and there is a competitor, the marketer would love to know what is being said, what questions are being asked, so they can more effectively help you position. They can position in the market more effectively, and the salesperson would love to know that information too. And so when we think about where you can think about not adding complexity of another workflow, but where you can actually alleviate it. I think there was a question earlier about also how like maybe not always picking an existing workflow. I think my response to that is there's actually workflows that are just not codified in any system, like this back and forth, where how do you help a marketer know what the sales team's talking about related to a competitor and back and forth. And so I think where you're going to start to see really effective AI is when you're going to be able to bring information from a marketer to a salesperson and vice versa, using AI to make them more effective at their job. So the actual agent is serving as the conduit, not necessarily a conversation between sales and marketing. I'll give you a very tactical example of that. I get off a call as a salesperson, there's a transcript. That transcript can be parsed, collated, assessed for competitors, for positioning, can be brought back to the marketer, and the marketer can get a debrief of that. That's something that is now possible. It's a workflow that was pretty unlikely to be able to get in without a lot of manual work. And so I actually think there's a really amazing opportunity to use this technology to actually create a much more cohesive team.
Yeah, I love this in some of the callouts in the chat. The thought I have on this is starting with things that are sources of problematic friction, and you're identifying some of those between sales and marketing in the examples you gave. and then looking at how you can solve those manually and how you do solve those manually, and then using AI to figure out how to do that at scale. I think that's one of the really exciting things about AI, right? Like we always talk about doing things faster and doing more work. Okay, cool. But how about doing stuff that we otherwise like couldn't even really do and doing it better and improving the experience for our customer, bringing it back to what you talked about, Adrian, with impact to customer, right? Optimizing there. We had an example of this in our product marketing meeting today that I thought was great. So context is we have a private community for AI transformation leaders at enterprise companies where they're able to knowledge share of like, what are they doing? You know, going back to this framework earlier to drive AI strategy. And we want to be able to share some of the insights in those conversations with the sales team, but we also don't want the sales team in there. You know, it's meant to be a sort of safe space for discussion with peers and colleagues and not someplace that you're going to get hit up by a sales rep. So one of our PMMs built an agent in Zapier, of course, that would extract out intel and send out summaries weekly and daily regular summaries of the data that was being shared and the conversation, like the insights that were being shared in those channels back to the sales reps. So I thought this was a really great one where it's like, we might be doing that one-to-one previously. We're like, hey, by the way, you know, here's some of the topics of discussion that your account partook in or was partaking in. Now we can do that at more scale without a human having to do that manual work. So some of those, like find the thing that has friction, figure out a way to scale it or figure out a way to nail it first, right? Nail it, then scale it, and then build it with AI is something that's exciting.
And Angela, I think you reminded me of a use case. I think it's really great. Where's the biggest friction between sales and marketing exist? Leads. I don't have enough leads, or it's not high enough quality, or they don't know how to convert them. And so this is actually a really great spot where there's the most friction to actually use AI to alleviate it. I think there's a couple ways you could do that in that example. You could use AI to respond to customers, or you could actually use AI to assess the conversations, give coaching to both sides. But I like to go wherever there's the most friction is probably the best opportunity, because you can make AI almost and an agent be the third party in that to bring the teams together. So you don't have to keep going in the circle of, I don't have enough leads. Yes, you do. I don't have enough quality leads. Yes, you do. You just don't know how to talk to them.
Yeah, that's a fun one. Well, marketing gave me garbage leads. Yeah, never ending cycle, right? Cool. All right, let's go to next question. So these questions centered around AI use cases and impact. And the one that we will start with is, beyond prompt engineering, what skills and processes are important to get the most out of AI?
From my point of view as a leader, it's show, don't tell, and it's make it a pull, not a push. And let me break that down. Show, don't tell. I actually want to build my own use cases, and that's what the spirit of today is. Share it out. Give ways to solve problems for my teams. Show them show them how I do it, and hopefully spark curiosity and new ways of they can think about it. But at the end of the day, just saying you have to use AI for me doesn't cut it. And I would never make my team do something that I wouldn't do first. And so that's why I really believe by that mantra. And that's also probably why when I stumbled a little bit in some of the first examples of GPTs I had actually built and agents I built to get them adopted. So that's the first one. The second one is I really prescribe by how do you make it a pull, not a push? How do you create these use cases where the people who are benefiting from whatever the AI creates, actually it's not you pushing them to use it, it's them being able to do their job more effectively by being on the receiving end. And I think there's so many examples where I think it's delighted us. And I think actually using your personal life and your own use cases of AI in your personal life are a great example of when it's delighted you there. Think about those times in business where you can delight someone and make their life easier. So I really believe in that pull, not push, which is why also I actually have a secret competition that no one knows about except for, I guess, me in our business, which is we can see all the agents that are being built, and I want to have the most used agent that I built for our business. And so we always like to look and see who's number one. Currently, I'm number 3, but I think I have a slight disadvantage because some of our GPTs or agents are actually publicly facing, and so I'm limited by the internal ones in this one. I know I got to get my game up.
I love the leaderboard. I mean, that fits squarely into culture, right? In terms of encouraging AI impact. What is number 1? Can you tell us what the number 1?
Actually, so the number 1 is a public-facing GPT that'll answer any technical questions about Webflow.
Oh, and it's on your website now.
It's available. So cool. you can it's in GPTs available for if you go into ChatGPT as an example, or for those that are customers, if you go into our help center, you can get help as well with it.
Cool. Have you measured, like, does that deflect conversations with support reps because people are self-serving answers?
So one of the interesting things about us is that we've had amazing success with our customers. And so we have a lot of customers, but specifically we also have a free product as well. And so one of the things that was always tough historically was how do you give help to the free customers? And AI has really helped us be able to do that. And so cool. So that's something that I'm very excited about. And so we've actually been able to respond to many more cases. And the thing that I told the team is my expectations is CSAT doesn't change.
Yeah, cool. So sort of upgrading scaled CS.
Exactly.
I like it. This one's interesting because there's all sorts of, like, there's the hard skill du jour, right? You were hearing a lot about context engineering, giving LLMs the right data at the right time. That's certainly important. The thing that's been most exciting for me personally in terms of skills and processes to get most out of AI is that it's an opportunity for a lot of us to go back to, like, put our startup hat on. And I was a YC startup founder before this, so I'm, like, always going to love, like, the early stage and startup mentality. But you go back to things like use an N of 1. You know, I mentioned nail it before you scale it. You get to really think about things very specific before you worry about scaling, and, like, design the ideal process first. And that's, like, I think, a skill, right? It's certainly a muscle that we've got to sort of practice and get out of the mindset of immediate scale. All right, now's the real time to shine. Can you highlight a personal use case of AI for Webflow and Zapier go-to-market teams as well?
Okay, so first personal, then business. Okay, well, this might be a little bit revealing, but here we go. So one of the things that you have the joy of when you own a home is that things always seem to go wrong. And so I had the idea to actually load up all of the documents and disclosures and everything from my home so that anytime something went wrong, I could actually ask GPT how to fix it and like know the context of my house. So I really tried to create a knowledge base of how my home had been. My wife and I moved into it a couple of years ago, so it was relatively recent, and so I do have that advantage. But it was one of the things that I really wanted to do, and it's been remarkably helpful. Specifically, when I started to have to ask questions around the city code and whether things I could do or not do. So that was a personal use case outside of business. And then moving on for Webflow, so there's so many that I could pick from. I think one of the ones that I think is really powerful, and I think we'll talk about in a little bit, and I think there was a question earlier around AEO, is that is how do you think about that customer engagement? Thank you for bringing it up. And so I wanted to figure out how do I make it faster and easier for my customer engagements. And when I asked the team to let me know when they wanted me to reach out to a customer, they would normally give me some bullets or draft of what's the context. And what happened was I would take it, and it would take me so much time to then curate it, send an email that was coming from me. So what I did instead was actually created a workflow. In Slack, someone goes and submits who they want me to reach out to, what's the context of the reach out, so that then I can actually go and send them a note. But now it's easier than ever before because you can have an agentic workflow, what used to be very manual. So you can take those couple key points, it puts it through a GPT to be able to make it sound like you, make it structured like you, and then it can drop it straight into your Gmail so you have a draft ready. So for me, it really speeds up the process, and I'm actually in drafts in Gmail making edits, which are much less because it actually is already taking the first leap of doing the edits, taking the context, and it knows how I sound, how I send emails. And the most important thing here is I always wanted to keep learning. So I always keep looking and having it search. I have it connected into Gmail. So I have it look at all my sent emails, have it learn, because I still make some tweaks and bring it back. So this is one of the use cases that I really love. It saves me a lot of time, because what used to take maybe 10 minutes to get an email shaped up, it takes me maybe like 2 or 3, and I tend to send a lot of emails to customers.
This is awesome. When there's a template here, I think we shared out the link, and based on your workflow for a Zapier agent, it's called the Cransifier, which I thought was great. Real quick, I'll cover 2 that are faves of mine. So I am equally revealing. I don't know if anyone else is like a space nerd or has been following 3i Atlas. Anyone? Would love to hear in the chat. I have been following this conspiracy around, is it a comet? Is it an alien ship? We don't really know. This would definitely fall in the personal use case category. So I created a Zapier agent. Oh, wrong one. Let's see. I think I maybe shared the wrong. Well, the link should be correct, but we'll refresh this in a minute. So a 3i Atlas conspiracy theory agent update, agent update. It will send me weekly updates in Slack on the latest conspiracy theories. It'll bump things to the top if they say confidential leak. So I know of like, this is real juicy stories about, again, if the aliens are coming to get us. So like, not really a conspiracy theorist, but have found this really fun to follow along with. And then the second one that's a little bit more of a team use case is we've got a pod of agents for PMM intel, and these do a number of things, looking at competitive insights, giving weekly updates, checking against our positioning docs to see if there are opportunities to insert voice of customer or to insert more like distinction between us and our competitors, and looking for white space. So a bunch of things here that are very different than the 3i Atlas alien agent, but equally, if not more useful, depending on who you talk to. Those are a couple of favorites.
Definitely stealing that one.
Yeah. Well, get that one going in your public Slack channels. So the next one is, how are you thinking about AEO, GEO, AIO? What the heck do you call it these days? Answer engine optimization versus SEO, given AI's impact on search.
This is a really fascinating time because the web is changing so quickly. In the past, you were competing for just clicks. How do you get clicks to your site? And now you're actually competing to be the answer. And that is a small but fundamental shift, because it still is about being discovered. But now you have this second piece, which is you're also being judged and summarized in large language models. And so it's a really interesting time because we're seeing it drastically change and so fast. And so as we think about how we help our customers and what we're learning, and we have across our customers, actually one interesting stat is we've seen a 125% surge in large language models crawling your website. And so they're looking for those answers. And so here's 4 kind of ways to think about it. First is, your content used to be around keywords. Now you need to think about also answers. Think of this as like FAQ doc style. And so that's one piece. The second is that there's a technical aspect of it. And then the third is your authority. So the ideas of backlinks continues to be important, but then you're also going to want to think about, Reddit goes into large language models. And so how do you think about widespread mentions and positivity? And the other part is like rethinking how your measurement might look. And so these are some of the things that really we've seen come up is as AI surge and people are using AI to get these answers and create these workflows, that it's searching for answers across the web. And if you want to be found and you want your business to be found, these are 4 key areas that really can help you be found more effectively. And to that end, actually, we actually created a AEO maturity assessment. So if any of you today would like to get a quick assessment on your website, you can scan the QR code. It's free. You'll get a PDF email after it'll take about 5 minutes or so. It'll look at your site, come back to you with a point of view of here's where you are. And if you want to break it down, so it's a preview, we've really leaned into these different levels of maturity with AEO, not very similar actually to the amazing work that the Zapier team to really talk about AI fluency in your business and where you might be in that spectrum. And so the readout will give you specific takeaways and where you sit, L1, L2, L3, just based off of your structure, your authority, your measurement, and content. And so hopefully that's something that will be helpful for all of you because it's something that's very top of mind for me as well.
I was asking in the chat if folks find any one of these the most challenging. I think one of the most interesting ones to me is authority, because it's like a drastic shift. And as someone with a customer marketing background, I think a lot about how do you get customers and users talking about you, and the offsite content starts to matter so much more than the things you have on your blog, which again is a drastic shift. So really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and it's really interesting also just thinking about how we've been talking about AI workflows, and a lot of these AI workflows that we've been bouncing around and talking about, you can think about these different areas and how do you create those workflows to help you meet this moment so that you use AI to be found by AI.
Use AI to be found by AI. Just AI is doing everything.
Well, I'll leave it. I'll say this. I firmly believe that while AI does a lot, the taste and the soul of your brand and your business, I think that's your creative edge. I think creativity is your competitive edge. It's your unfair advantage. And the question is, can you bring your taste to life and then scale it with agents?
Yeah. So I was at an Intuit event yesterday where they were posing the question in 5 years, which I'm thinking 2031. Wow, really hard to anticipate what the heck is going to be, the world going to be like that. But in 2031, what are the brands you trust, right? Like, I will trust this brand if, and one of the consensus ideas behind this was the humans, right? Like that my friend told me they use it, that my friend trusts them to use it. So it's going back to some of those basics. I thought it was a really interesting question for figuring out what the heck is left.
I agree, 100%.
Cool. All right. So we got the QR code up there. Maybe like 1 or 2 more questions before we shift to live questions. So this one was in the category of scaling AI impact. And the question is, what would be the first and most crucial step a go-to-market leader should take to avoid being left behind? Ooh.
The first and most crucial step so you don't get left behind. Lead, model the way. Model the way is what I would say. If you're not willing to model the way, expect to be left behind. I think the reality is that all of us at every role, at every level, need to be curious. And if you're not willing to do it, then you shouldn't expect others to.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've painted a little bit of a picture for like the thing, maybe the top 3 things, that's not one, but is show, don't tell, anchor in customer impact, and create sort of like the culture, right? Set, whether that's starting with code red and creating urgency, or setting up like the hackathons, whatever method of setting the priority and urgency with and culture with your team. Cool. For companies already experimenting with AI, how do you think about balancing quick wins, fast content creation, versus long-term transformations like rethinking customer journeys?
Oh, I could have an entire hour on just this question. When thinking about the combination of quick wins versus long-term transformations, I think it comes down to how dramatically different do you think the experience can become? And I think that's where I start to think of the differences. So I'll give you an example of each. I think there's a lot of quick wins that we can do taking, and I think someone mentioned in the chat earlier, and I thought it was so astute, like taking unstructured data that is language. So whether it's transcript data from customer calls, which is a hugely valuable resource for go-to-market teams, and turn it into value that lets you make decisions about your business, lets you understand trends in the business. These are the areas where it's already there. It's just unstructured, and previously it was just hard to get as much value out of it. So that's one area where I think you can go really fast. And the area that I would say longer term thinking is thinking through how relevance is going to change. The meaning of it is going to change completely. I think we are moving to a world where more and more people have so many experiences with large language models being so context aware of who they are and how they answer the questions, that when they come to your businesses, they're going to want to be met with that same level of curated experience. And more importantly, I think the experience they want to have with you needs to be differentiated from an LLM and needs to wow them, or else they might as well just learn about you, ask questions about you, but never come to you. And to me, that really is a longer term question, but it has to start today.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at this question, I think you can strike everything related to AI and ask the question and answer it in the same context you would with other things. So experimenting with anything, how do you think about balancing quick wins with longer term transformations? Like, this is always a challenge, right? It's like, where do I spend my time on the things that I can just get quick ROI versus where do I spend the time on the things that are maybe going to take a longer arc and get to, but have a bigger impact. One of the things I'll say is that one of the things I'll mention that we do at Zapier that I really like is we've got we run regular hackathons, and our go-to-market team has a database of basically ideas, use cases that we want to build contributed across the org. I just checked on Tuesday, and I think it was at like 278 different ideas. And what happens is we dump those in, so there's like an ideation phase, and everyone's incentivized to do so. And then we go through and we filter on different categories like ultimate impact and the area of impact. What metric is this impacting, and the level of effort for build. So I think that helps, this shouldn't be a perfect science, but I think it helps balance the art and science of saying, like, what is the actual estimated impact or hypotheses for impact on this particular project? And then lets you sort of like roadmap it to decide when you spend the time on it.
And Angela, one thing I'd add, because I just saw in the chat something that someone said around Notebook LM, which just made me remember of probably the quickest win use case that all of you probably can use today, is that for me, that I love, is when someone starts on your team, I now hand them a podcast. You probably have documents that you have in different places. You bring it all together. You can craft a day one podcast, or let's call it even a day zero podcast. They haven't even started, and they can come in and be introduced into your business with a really cool podcast experience. I'm using that all the time. And I think part of it is like, how do I think that can get different levels of sophistication. You can get to an agent helping you craft that and curate it. And then also help you be able to figure out what's next. But I think that's something that can be a really quick win and a delightful experience for someone that's new.
Cool. All right, Ryan, do you want to jump up into the stage and we can start answering live questions?
Hey, okay.
Ryan, everyone.
Here I am. Great. For folks here, ask these questions through the questions panel, and we'll get to them. We're just going to start with the upvotes. So let's start at the top here. I think this is a good one for you, Angela, but let me know. Actually, this is a good one for both of you. What's your favorite productivity hack when working with automation, agents, AI, anything? What's your top productivity hack?
You want to tackle first, or you want me to take it first?
You take it first. I'll go right after.
Yeah. So I have two things. One is, and this sounds basic, but it has been a huge unlock for me, is using ChatGPT voice mode. And so that's the thing, where you put it in the little audio button and it talks back to you. So you're talking, not where it's transcribing what you're saying, but where it's actually talking back to you. And what I found really helpful is, like, sometimes I am just typed out, right? I'm sure we're all so sick of the Slack knock brush sound. I never hear it anymore because I have it on mute, but like so much Slack, so much typing and articulating out your thoughts in words, on written words, having the voice mode to be able to just speak like nonsense or in half sentences and just help formulate thoughts or work through harder problems that are not yet concrete and clear, and then ask it to do some of that structured thinking for me is really great. So I love that as my number one. What was my number two? Well, let me pause there. I know we're a little short on time, so I'll stick with one, let Adrian answer, and maybe I'll come back to it.
Okay, I love that one. I think voice is a great way to go so much faster. For me, and we talked about this in the lead up to this. My chief of staff, that's actually just an agent, is so helpful because whenever I'm thinking of making a new decision, I run it by it and I say, "Tell me what I'm not looking. What's my blind spot?" And so it's just a great productivity hack because in seconds I can go from my idea to new ways to think about the problem. And so I really love that it points it out. And it also happens to compliment me every time. So I don't like that. I like that.
Tells you how great you are. The one other I'll mention that I really like is there was a book by Eric Nerlich. I'm going to butcher his name, but it's called You Have a Choice. And it talks a lot about like burnout in tech culture and how to focus on the things that matter most. And I think like counterintuitively, sometimes we think about productivity as doing or productivity hacks all about doing more. And a lot of times I think it's actually about doing less, like doing the things that matter more and finding the things that are more aligned to your own, I like to call it zone of genius. So I took a lot of his journaling prompts in that book and I turned them into an agent that will prompt me to, or two agents that will prompt me to do a little like mini journaling at the end of every day on things that gave me energy, at the end of every week on the things that gave me energy and that like sucked away energy. And then it'll summarize how those, like the trends week over week, and it'll give me some tips that may seem obvious, but sometimes are really helpful for giving me like just ways to spend my time more aligned with what drives energy.
I love those a lot. You'll get mine as well. I couldn't second what Angela said more. I do that all the time. Sometimes I'm just really tired and typing it out I'm just give it stream of consciousness. And then I can, keep using voice mode more and more. And it helps so much. The other thing is for folks that are Zapier customers, ChatGPT knows a lot about Zapier. And if you want to ask it things about Zapier as you're building something, it's really good. It's gotten me out of some jams as I'm building stuff and I just feel stuck.
I think someone in the chat even mentioned that's how they use ChatGPT.
Are they nice?
And if you want a personal hack, you can take a picture of almost anything and ask it how much it costs, and it normally always gets it right.
What kinds of things?
Literally anything. I was looking at literally anything. You just say, how much is this coffee machine? Like we were playing this game earlier today. It was kind of funny.
That's awesome.
Cheats
for Price is Right.
We'll get off the rails for a moment, but I did that. There's paint chipping in our shower, and I just took a picture of it. I said, how do you fix this? And give me a step-by-step guide and a Home Depot shopping list. And it like laid it all out for me. And I followed it to a T, and shower's looking good at our house now.
I love that. I was thinking when Adrian was talking, I was thinking those of you who have like, kids in the 10 to 15-year-old range, this feels like a great way to give them no excuses for being bad at chores.
That's great. All right, let's move on to this one from Michael. What is something you learned from an AI experience that failed and it surprised you?
Ooh, what's something that failed?
Well, I'd say that a couple of probably the easiest AI experiments that have failed is we run a lot of tests on our website. And so we play around with a lot of different variations. And so we actually have AI constantly updating it, and it dynamically will change like the title, et cetera. And so one of the things that fails all the time when you're doing that is certain headlines. I think one thing that I was really curious about is what types of headlines failed where in the world. And so it actually revealed to me something a little bit interesting, which is how we think of, and this kind of ties back to the cultural question that we talked about. The culture, and there's people from all over the world here. Different cultures are going to think and process how AI works with them, with their data in different ways. Mm-hmm. And I think we have a global team and we have global customers, but it also, I think it really was telling just from the experiment we ran that just even how we think of, just be mindful that when you're trying to implement it amongst your teams, that there's going to be different reactions that you have to factor in and understand so that people actually adopt the technology. And I think that was one of the most telling things, is that we were explaining how you could, go from prompt to a landing page with Webflow and understand, and that gives, and we're like, this is amazing, it's so simple. But understanding the context behind that and what it would mean, depending on where you are, was something that we learned from it.
I'm sure we have more examples of experiments and things that fail. And honestly, if we don't, like, we're probably not pushing hard enough. But the one that's coming to mind for me right now is trying to create, like, use ChatGPT to create images to put into, I think it was like Neo 3, or like basically create a video that would use a lot of those images. And it just did not work. And it was a good reminder that there's like task specificity and task maturity around what AI can and can't do today. And maybe more so that, like, the things that the LinkedIn gurus are posting, like, sometimes there's some smoke and mirrors there, and sometimes it's like not fully ready for prime time, or it's not, all is not what it seems.
I love it. Well, I won't add on because I think there's one last really good question here. We've got 3 minutes, so we'll have to kind of keep it short. But from Brian here, what are your predictions around shifts in the sales process in the next 12 months? I'll just leave it at that. You can see it here.
Great question, Ryan. So I might give you a little bit of a counterintuitive answer. I actually really believe, and I think we were talking about it in the chat earlier, I really believe that the human element, the soul of who your company, your creativity, and how that comes to life will continue to matter, and actually matter more. There's a sea of AI sameness out there. Everyone's using the same large language models. Your only real advantage to make it different is, are you able to give it the context? Are you able to connect it to the right system so it can have that context? Are you able to bring it to life in a way that gives you a different answer than someone else? But I think what's going to happen here is the pieces of the puzzle that are the human to human connections and that creativity and that differentiation, those that nail that while also learn how to use AI around that process. And I'll give you a very specific example. Maybe the first response you get from the company is all email. Maybe the second response is, but there's a point where having a conversation with a human and knowing someone's there might matter more in sales. And it also depends on the cultural realities of where you're doing business, what type of investment it is. Right? My hypothesis and my bet is I want to surround my teams with all these amazing capabilities around AI to really help them do more of that. I want them to do less of the stuff today that is required to do the job effectively with rigor, and more of the talk to more customers. I want you to talk to as many customers as possible. So for me, that's how I'm envisioning it, is really use agents, automations to like surround the rep on everything to get them onto more customer calls and be able to be more meaningfully impactful with them.
I think that's great. I mean, one thing we see in sales and marketing cycles is that what's innovative one day becomes table stakes the next day. So I have my eye on this quite a bit with AI, right? Where everything becomes so personalized, and suddenly that's just table stakes and isn't enough to make a difference. So I have my eye on where things go in terms of how we make real meaningful connections with customers. Like, we see it playing out with in-person dinners now, but where's that going to go in the next year, as again, everyone can have a perfectly crafted, personalized relevant email. So I don't have any real specific, like, here's what's going to happen, but things that I have my eye on.
Love it. Well, we're right at the top of the hour. So Angela, I think you can wrap us up here, and I'll go off stage. Thanks, everybody.
Amazing. Thank you so much all for joining. We have a lot of questions we didn't get to. We will cover these in some follow-ups. Thank you so much, Adrian, for joining. It was a really good and incredible insight in a number of ways here. I love the real examples. For folks who want more, we will be doing more of these. And we also have Zap Connect, our main user conference, coming up on September 25th. We've got a bunch of sessions for sales and marketing leaders, as well as salespeople and marketers. So please come and shoot us a note if you have other requests or questions on things you want to see. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you all joining.
Thank you.
Bye.